This is your brain. This is your brain after decades of government propaganda convincing you that police need more money to fight a war on drugs. Any questions? Because I have a lot. Let's play a game where you have to put the answer in the form of a question. For copyright reasons, we'll call this game Schmepardy. This policy increased police militarization, killed countless innocent people, ballooned our prison population, gave police the right to literally steal your stuff without charging you for a crime, all while achieving basically none of its stated goals because it's based on a politically calculated racist lie. Ooh, what is the war on drugs? That is depressingly correct. And you know, it's a great question. What is the war on drugs? Well, for starters, a massive failure. And when I say that, I'm really just paraphrasing the words of former director of National Drug Control Policy, Gail Kurlikowski, who in 2010 said, quote, "In the grand scheme, it has not been successful. 40 years later, the concern about drugs and drug problems is, if anything, magnified, intensified." So today we're going to talk about how the war on drugs is a lie, and how it's fueled some of the worst aspects of modern policing. But first, let's get on the same page about a working definition, because it's not really a war on drugs. It's more like a war on certain drugs. Actually, it's more like a war on certain people framed by an alarmist view of certain drugs, which just isn't as catchy. In 1971, Richard Nixon declared his war on drugs, explaining that he viewed drug use as public enemy number one in the United States. He later went on to create the Drug Enforcement Administration, or the DEA, an agency meant to serve as a special police force focused on preventing the use, sale, and smuggling of illegal drugs within the United States. When it was first started, the DEA had 1,470 agents and a budget of less than $75 million. These days, the DEA has nearly 5,000 agents and a budget of $2 billion. And it's not just the DEA. Today, we spend over $47 billion per year losing the war on drugs. Now, the name Nixon isn't exactly synonymous with truth, justice, and virtuous motives, but in a 1994 interview, a Nixon official openly admitted that the war on drugs was not about stopping drug use, but rather as a smear campaign targeting communities Nixon viewed as his enemies. Nixon's former domestic policy chief, John Ehrlichman, told a reporter that the Nixon campaign felt threatened by, quote, the anti-war left and black people. We couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. Cool! I guess it's a good thing future presidents from both parties decided that we really needed to spend over $1 trillion enhancing and enforcing this lie over the past 50 years. Man, that is a lot of zeros. So what has that spending achieved? Well, we could do an 800-part series on the failure of the war on drugs, but instead, let's start with why your local police went from looking like this to this. To understand how we got here, we've got to go back to Ronald Reagan, who carried Nixon's legacy into the 1980s. In a June 2020 interview, Radley Balko, author of The Rise of the Warrior Cop, said, "Reagan created these task forces that are part military, part local police. And then he starts sort of informally instructing the Pentagon to make surplus military equipment available to police departments to use. And this really kickstarts the militarization, which gives us the rise of SWAT teams and no-knock warrants." Despite SWAT teams being created to deal with heavily armed criminals like hostage takers and snipers, these paramilitary police forces are now primarily used in searches and raids, most of which are related to non-violent drug-related crimes. And though numbers aren't easy to come by, because the federal government doesn't track SWAT raids and states aren't obligated to, an ACLU analysis showed that about 35% of SWAT drug raids turned up contraband, while 36% of them turned up nothing, and 29% of SWAT reports didn't mention whether they found anything, which sounds like those raids also found nothing. The 80s is also when no-knock search warrants, a tactic that resulted in the murder of Breonna Taylor this year, began skyrocketing. Originally a strategy exclusively used by the military, it's estimated that municipal police and sheriff's departments used no-knock or quick-knock warrants about 1,500 times in the early 1980s. But by 2010, that number went up to an estimated 60 to 70,000 annually. Oh, and in 2003, the commissioner of the NYPD estimated that of the 450 no-knock raids the city conducted every month, 10% were wrong-door raids. I'm pretty sure if Uber Eats showed up at the wrong address 10% of the time, we would have completely defunded it. When a government frames vulnerable communities as enemies, it leads to violence inflicted on civilians, like in May 2014, when police in Georgia threw a flashbang grenade into the crib of a 19-month-old toddler during a SWAT raid, or the March 1994 case, where a 75-year-old minister died of a heart attack after a Boston SWAT team barged into the wrong apartment. One police source told the Boston Herald, "You'd be surprised at how easily this can happen." I mean, yeah, I'm also surprised at how many of these police officers still have jobs. But it's not just Republicans behind the war on drugs. In 1994, Democratic President Bill Clinton passed the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act. The 1994 law allocated billions to increasing the number of police and doubled the rate of incarceration in this country between 1994 and 2009 by providing financial incentives for states that kept people imprisoned longer. The widespread impact of the Crime Act's harsh punishments for drug use were influenced heavily by the Controlled Substances Act, which categorized controlled substances based on how dangerous the government thinks they are. Nixon signed the CSA into law in 1970, placing marijuana in the Schedule 1, or most dangerous category. As a result, weed became the drug for which most SWAT raids and searches were executed. This classification was not based on science, but instead goes back to Nixon's original goal of criminalizing Black communities. People of color use marijuana at the same rate as white folks, yet the ACLU found that Black people in the US are 3.64 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession than their white counterparts. Let's be real, if the intention of the war on drugs was to arrest everyone who did drugs, I'm pretty sure Burning Man wouldn't be a thing. But the police aren't just stopping people to throw them in jail. They're also stopping them to take their stuff, whether those people are charged with the crime or not. Civil asset forfeiture was supposed to exist so police could seize drugs and paraphernalia, but today, it's a process that allows cops to treat civilians and their property like they're on an episode of Supermarket Sweep. A 2017 report by the Justice Department Office of Inspector General found that the DEA seized more than $4 billion in cash from people suspected of drug activity over the past decade. But of that figure, $3.2 billion were never connected to any criminal charges. I mean, it's not $1 trillion, but that is still a lot of zeros. The truth is that the war on drugs was never really about drugs. It was about criminalizing certain communities, particularly those of color. But if we want to help people in communities who do struggle with substance misuse, then more policing will never be the answer. Instead, we should look to other community-oriented solutions. Take Portugal. In 2001, they took the radical steps of decriminalizing all drugs combined with a public health initiative focused on preventing and treating drug addiction and dependency. The results have been dramatically positive. Overdose deaths decreased by over 80%, incarceration for drug offenses decreased by over 40%, and the much feared rise in use never happened. Like many of the worst fads of the 70s, 80s, and 90s, it's time to retire the war on drugs. But it's up to us to push these issues to the forefront and stay informed on the policies that impact our communities. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time right here on Decoded.